conversations that I've had with young adults, with congregations, it seems to me that in the recent past, and maybe not just recent past, but in the past, churches have been afraid or very hesitant for people to ask questions. Why have questions been so scary for the church or even for people of faith?
I think there are a number of reasons. As you even used the word scary in your question, I think inevitably, when people open up a question, there's the potential that someone will answer it differently, and there's a fear in that. There's a fear that we'll somehow cross the line beyond orthodoxy, and the church will no longer be the church. People talk about that slippery slope, with people bringing in ideas from other religions, just this concept of an open spirituality. There are a lot of questions right now, obviously, between law and grace in the church, and where is that line? Where do we draw it before we actually are no longer the church, are no longer the body of Christ? I think that that's a legitimate wondering, but it's not a legitimate place to allow our fear to rule our lives and to rule the church. And I think that is an area where millennials get frustrated because they are willing to ask those questions. And they're, it is a generation, I think, generally speaking, of people who are seeking, and sometimes they don't even know what they're seeking for, but always questioning, always wondering, always seeking. And when they butt up against any kind of institution that says that kind of questioning is not welcome here, there is inherently a bit of a feeling of being taken aback and rejected. And also, I think just not understanding where that fear comes from. And so I think, I don't think that millennials want to be seen as being disrespectful of the church or its traditions. And I don't really think they are. I think they just really want to know why things are the way that they are, and are unwilling to take things at face value. And I think sometimes when people are passing traditions down, there is kind of this sense that we just want to tell you how it's always been. We just want to tell you how it works for us. But that's not the same kind of question that millennials are asking. They're asking the question, all right, tell me how things have always been, but then tell me why. Right. And then I'll tell you whether or not I can get on board with your plan. Or maybe I'll really like part of what I hear, but then I'll want to tweak it a little bit, and add my own flavor. And I think that that's a really exciting place to be, but definitely for an institution, that has been grounded in particular principles, particular ways of doing things for a very long time. That can be scary because it means that the way that things have been done is gonna break down, but it might break down in a way that it can be rebuilt in a tremendously beautiful fashion. So I don't blame people for being afraid of the questions, but I think it means that we need to be more willing to engage those questions within ourselves. I think sometimes when we get scared of other people's questions, it's really because we're afraid of what it's going to mean for changing our own hearts and lives, right? And isn't that what Paul tells us to do? We need to change our hearts and our lives, right? And that's an ongoing process, right? So it is, but it can be a scary one because that means that we're completely reevaluating our faith and how we practice it all the time. Sounds a little exhausting. I just got this figured out, and now you're asking me to change it. But I think we need to approach it less fearfully and with more excitement, for what can be built, when we look at it together.
And where's the Spirit going to take us? And just remaining open for that uncertainty, but embracing that uncertainty to know that God is present in that, and is taking us to places that we couldn't go ourselves without the leading of the Spirit.
Exactly. And recognizing too that the foundational pieces, these traditions that have been passed down, they are deeply important.
Yeah.
And I think that really is something that I want to emphasize, that millennials generally are very, very interested in ritual, fascinated by tradition, and so we need to let them be fascinated, let them ask those questions about why things are the way that they are, so that they can incorporate really powerful traditions into their lives, traditions that allow us to be, to have ordered lives, to have rhythmic lives that are faithful to God's command for us to have Sabbath, and to be a part of a shaping community. All of those things are very important, and they're things that are often missing in millennials' lives, because their lives can be tremendously scattered.
Right.
And so that's something that the church really has to offer them, a place where meaningful tradition, meaningful ritual, and rhythm to life and community accountability are powerfully present.
Right. And transformative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But we need to let them ask the questions about why those things exist in the first place.
So one of the things that we've been talking about and working through and trying to figure out is how does the church become a place for doubters? And we have this wonderful scripture story of a saint who doubted, who said, I'm not going to believe unless I see and can touch. And that's, for me, that's a beautiful story in our scripture. And so what's going to happen to us? What's going to happen to our church when we become a place that is completely open and welcoming to doubters, when we embrace Thomas?
Well, hopefully the scripture story will continue to be fulfilled, because what happens in that story, right? Jesus says, all right, Thomas, come closer, come and see. And he does. And hopefully what will happen is that as we all come closer to one another, we'll be able to see the Jesus in each other more clearly. And hopefully the world will be able to see there's something different. There is something different about this community that is wounded. Come, Thomas, see the wounds of Christ. We are a broken church. There's no question. And we're a broken world. There's no question. But there is also this intense hope that we have, and I think my hope, all of our hopes, would be that the world would come to see that, and that we would not be seen as a community that is a community that rejects or judges and applies our labels, but that we would come to be known as an open, embracing place and people. And that we wouldn't just be identified with our buildings, but that we would be everywhere. That people would find that they are encountering Jesus everywhere, and that would be a good surprise.
Be a very great surprise.
Yeah. So I think Jesus loved Thomas. And if Thomas is our example of what a millennial is, then Jesus definitely would love them and would want to embrace them. And so we've got quite a role model to follow after.
So the end of your annual conference presentation, you asked a question, and you said, "This is what we really need to consider for young adult ministry." So I'm going to ask you, Anna, the question that you said everybody should be asking themselves.
Right.
So
this is the dangerous part.
This is the question. How do you suggest the Christian community help young adults face their doubts squarely and integrate their questions into a robust life of faith?
Yes, I did ask that question, didn't I? Well, I think since I'm making everyone else answer it, I probably should answer it. But I think that a place to start is that within that question, it's not actually my question, it's one of Kinnaman's questions, right? And it implies slightly that millennials do not have a robust life of faith. And I would like to actually dispute my question slightly in that I believe that there is an inherently deep spirituality, generally speaking, about this generation, and a seeking after a life of faith that might not look exactly like that seeking did in other generations, but there is a path there already. And so then the question is perhaps more really about that word robust, how do we deepen that engagement? And I think the only way, honestly, that we can deepen that engagement in them is to deepen that engagement within ourselves. When we ask the question, how do we deal with this millennial generation? What do we do with them? I think we're actually asking the wrong question. I think we should be asking the question, how do we engage more deeply with our own spirituality, with our own faith, in a way that invites authentic dialogue with other generations? And that's not a question I think that people particularly want to hear, because that requires a lot of us. It's much more than a program. That is a deep engagement with our own fears. And I think a lot of what's wrapped up in this conversation about millennial spirituality is a conversation of fear about what's going to happen to the church, what's going to happen to this thing that we have built. We've spent our whole lives, blood, sweat, and tears, making sure that it survives. And here this generation comes along and they don't even care. They're not interested. They are interested. It's just they're asking slightly different questions, and they're questions that we need to be asking. Every generation needs to be asking in order to deepen a robust life of faith together. So, yeah.
So it's more of and this theme keeps coming up, and obviously if this is the answer, then it's going to keep surfacing of this partnership and relationship building, and let us learn from one another. Let us develop a robust faith, because your experiences are different from my experiences.
Right.
And the people you talk to are different from the people that I talk to.
Yeah.
And that builds this robust faith. It is not from one perspective.
Exactly.
It is a beautiful engagement of a variety, kaleidoscope, if you will, of experiences and thoughts, and just what my life has been is not what your life has been, and Jesus has spoken into my life differently, and to be able to bring that and say, this is how Jesus has spoken into my life. This is where I've seen God present and active in the things that I have gone through. How have you seen that? And then to bring that and then say, oh, well, that happened to me too. Maybe that was God there.
Yeah.
And that's more accessible to me. That seems not so daunting to me to build from there.
Yeah. That it's the basic level of truly beautiful human engagement. Yeah. And it's exactly what we need. It's exactly what I got in the church when I was growing up. It's part of why I became a pastor. And I think it's what we owe one another, to be authentic and real in our human engagement, seeking Jesus in one another, but it's still very human, very vulnerable engagement with each other. And that's not something that I think Americans are particularly great at, having lived outside this country for a little while. I think it really is something we struggle with. We have a deep sense of pride, and that has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks when you start to engage in these types of conversations, and the walls have to come down. We need to learn how to be vulnerable with each other again. So, and that's a good thing. Yeah.